All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Bruce from the Epic Experiment Podcast, and we are bringing with you brand new deck tech. This week, we're looking at Varolz, the Scar Striped. Now, this is one of my favorite archetypes. I love to play plus encounters, and I love it in black and green. So, Dagatar is an Abzan commander that I've got that plays in a similar space. But I was looking through some old junk and I put together Varolz, and I have to say I rather like what it does. It definitely can do a lot of damage in a hurry and leave people sort of just mouth wide open, wondering what the story is going on. So let's talk about Varolz and what Varolz does. All right, so Varolz is a legendary creature, 1 black and a green for a 2/2 legendary creature troll warrior. Each creature card in your graveyard has Scavenge. So Scavenge is a mechanic that came from Return to Ravnica. It was the Golgari mechanic where you could take a creature and you could put its equivalent of its power in terms of +1/+1 encounters on a creature for paying a mana cost. And now all your creatures can do the same thing. So you can take a creature and pay its mana cost and put an equal number of +1/+1 encounters equal to its power. And then this one has sacrifice another creature, regenerate Varolz the Scar Striped. Cool, super interesting. Because of the regeneration, it often plays as it often gets played as a Voltron deck because your commander is reasonably sticky. But this sort of deck is looking to put a lot of big things in your graveyard, but probably big things that are undercosted, maybe have drawbacks, and then use that to pump them and turn them into particularly big things. So we've got some things here that are going to be creatures that you want to put in your yard and scavenge. All right, so great example, this would be Daemogoth War Eater from Strixhaven. So this is a hybrid black, green, and a green for a 7/6. So you're paying 4 mana for a 7/6. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. Okay, I'm probably sacrificing this one. I don't really care. When you sacrifice Daemogoth Woe Eater, each opponent discards a card and you draw a card and you gain 2 life. So this is the sort of perfect card you want to play because you play it for 4s, it's pretty cheap. Then you sacrifice it to its own trigger, and then you get to draw a card and you gain 2 life, and your opponent discards a card, and now you've got fodder to go and stick under to scavenge with Varolz to do good work. Here's another great example. So we have Nixithid, which is 1 black for a 7/7. So 3 mana, 7/7. As Nixithid enters the battlefield, choose an opponent. Nixithid gets -1/-1 for each card in the chosen player's hand. So in lots of games, if this were to stick on the battlefield, this is probably a 4/4, maybe a 3/3 if your opponents have got a lot of cards in hand still. But in the graveyard, this doesn't matter. So this is just still a 7/7. And so when Varolz checks it, it goes, 3 mana, 7/7 scavenge. All right, we're putting 7 +1/+1 counters on Varolz. All right, add to that, we have Phyrexian Soul Gorger at 8/8 for 3 generic. It has a cumulative upkeep of sacrifice a creature. Cool, I'm sacrificing this the first chance I get. So this sacrifices itself, sticks it in his graveyard, and next thing you know, 3 mana, you put 8 +1/+1 counters on your thing, away we go. We have Clackbridge Troll, 5 mana, 8/8. So it's 3 black for an 8/8 Troll, trample haste. When Clackbridge Troll enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 3 0/1 white goat creature tokens. At the beginning of combat on your turn, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If a player does, tap Clackbridge Troll, you gain 3 life and you draw a card. This is handy. Sure, it's a little more expensive, so it's 5 mana instead of 3. But the fact that it might draw you a card or do a little bit of damage once in a while means it might stay on the battlefield a little bit longer. And when it goes to your graveyard, you don't really feel bad about getting it and scavenging it back onto your stuff. Daemogoth Titan. So this is a black-green hybrid, black-green hybrid, black-green hybrid, black-green hybrid. So 4 mana for an 11/10. Whenever Daemogoth Titan attacks or blocks, sacrifice a creature. Well, you're sacrificing this, so who cares? All right, we have a Deadbridge Goliath, which is 2 green for a 5/5 with scavenge already on it, so 4 green. This is a big old thumper, and you put it down for 4, and away you go to work. Force of Savagery is a fun one. This is a 2 and a green for a elemental with trample, and it is an 8/0. So meaning it comes into play and it promptly dies. So that's cool because 3 mana for 8+1/+1 counters on your Varolz is good fun. Then we have a Hunted Bone Brute. So this is a 1 and a black for a 6/2. It has Menace. When Hunted Bone Brute enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 2 1/1 white dog creature tokens. When Hunted Bone Brute dies, each opponent loses 3 life, and then you can disguise it. So that's like morphing it. So it comes in face down, and we pay for 3, and then for 1 and a black, you can flip it up. So again, same sort of idea. It might stick around a little bit longer because of the fact that you're trying to put it into your graveyard, but maybe not right away. And then we have a new inclusion from Aether Drift, so 1 black for a 7/2. This is Kalaskion Hunger Tyrant. It's a legendary creature crocodile. Again, so 3 mana for a 7-powered creature to scavenge. Looks like fun. Some other things that are in this collection, we have Glowspore Shaman, which is just sort of mill effect. So a black and a green for a 3/1, and when it enters the battlefield, you mill 3, and then you may put a land card from your graveyard on top of your library. So you go find a land, even better if you dump a few creatures in your yard, even better. Golgari Grave Troll. So this one's 4 and a green for a 0/0, and it says when Golgari Grave Troll enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature card in your graveyard, and remove a +1/+1 counter on it, Golgari Grave Troll, regenerate Golgari Grave Troll. And then it also has, more importantly, Dredge 6. So instead of drawing, you can put the top 6 cards of your library into your graveyard, hopefully a few creatures, and put Golgari Grave Troll back in your hand. Multani, Yavimai's Avatar, so 4 green for a 0/0 with a legendary creature elemental avatar. So it has Reach and Trample, and then it gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land in your graveyard, and then 1 and a green, return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand. Return Multani from the graveyard to your hand. So again, it can be sticky, it's probably pretty big, in the late stages of the game, probably get some work done. Yeva, Nature's Herald, so 2 green for a 4/4, has legendary creature Elf Shaman with Flash. You may cast green creature cards as though they had Flash. Well, since you have many of those, that's good news. And then we have an Orcish Bowmasters, which is just a good card to punish your opponents. Pretty useful stuff. Now, obviously, all those things are going to require quite a bit of mana to get them cast and then dead and then turn them into scavenge. So let's see how we're doing this for mana. So we have a Rampant Growth. All right, 1 and a green, put a land into play tapped. Cool. We got the good old Sol Ring. Can't go without that, so we'll play that one. This one's kind of a neat one. Stone Speaker Crystal. So 4 mana. So that's pretty steep. But it makes 2. Alright. So I've usually been down on this effect in the past. But let's see what else it does. 2 and a tap. Sacrifice Stone Speaker Crystal. Exile any number of target players' graveyards. Draw a card. So this acts as graveyard hate and can replace itself. So this is why we're playing this, because sometimes I do think it's important to make sure you have some graveyard hate built into your deck. And that one seems like a pretty innocuous way to do it. Exploration. So we'll talk about how this deck draws cards in a bit. It's going to draw a bunch, and you're going to want to put some of those lands into play. Also, since Multani might make you pick some lands up, so sometimes it's useful to have an exploration hiding in your deck to go and make sure you can make extra land drops. Ancient Cornucopia. This one's an interesting one. So 2 and a green, and then whenever you cast a spell as 1 or more colors, you may gain 1 life for each of those colors. And then you do it only once each turn, and you tap to add 1 mana. So this is an interesting artifact, 3 mana. I think the life gain on it is surprisingly useful. It wouldn't take long to pick up enough life points to make it do quite a bit. All right, Flare Cultivation. Well, since I want to put creatures in my graveyard, I'm routinely using this to ramp instead of paying the 1 green. So I'm going to use the free mode on to sacrifice one of my creatures to go and get more lands. We've got a Cultivate. This is a classic one, 2 and a green. You go search up 2 basic lands, reveal those cards, put one on the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand. We have Harrow, which is one of my favorites. Sacrifice a land, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them into play. Shuffle your library afterwards. We have an Invasion of Zendikar. So this one's kind of neat. So when it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. And then if you deal 3 points of damage to it, since it's a battle, you can flip it into a 4/4 with Trample and Reach. It's pretty handy. We have Winding Way, which is kind of an interesting one. 1 and a green. I like the fact it's 2 mana. Choose creature or land. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all cards of the chosen type revealed this way into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So this can act like card draw, where if you're looking for creatures and you think you've got a bunch on the top of your deck, but usually I'm using this to go find land and dump the creatures into my graveyard quite happily. Then we've got a Dark Ritual, just because sometimes you need to hurry things out and a ritual effect is useful. All right. Now, because I'm putting things into my graveyard, I'm going to want to get things back out of my graveyard. So we have an Evolution Witness. So whenever we put on counters, we're going to get things back, permanents back from my graveyard back to my hand. Super useful, particularly since I want to put a lot of creatures in my graveyard, but some of them are better than others, and I would like some of them back. We have a Squirming Emergence. Well, since you have lots of permanents in your graveyard, you're going to be able to get one of those big things back easily. All right, we've got Rise of the Witch King. 2 black-green for a sorcery. Each player sacrifices a creature. Yes, please. If you sacrifice a creature, of course I did, you may return another permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I love putting them right back into play. That's good fun. We have a Golgari Thug. This one's interesting. 1 and a black for a 1/1 human warrior. When Golgari Thug dies, put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library, and it has Dredge 4. So instead of drawing, you can dumpster some cards into your graveyard and use them again. And then Honest Rutstein. When Honest Rutstein enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. All right, good stuff. Now, let's talk about how I'm going to put some counters on things. All right, so we're going to play some things that are going to put extra counters on stuff. So, Young Deathclaws. All right, so this is 2 black-green with a 4/2 with Menace. Each creature card in your graveyard has Scavenge. The Scavenge cost is equal to its mana cost. This is identical to the text on Varolz, so if you have your Varolz dead, you can still get your deck online and get moving with this one, which is useful. We have a Corpsejack Menace. So 2 black-green for a 4/4. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. Ooh, that looks like fun. And then we have an Evolution Sage. So 2 and a green for a 3/2. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you proliferate. All right. Now, let's talk about how this deck is going to draw some cards. Because you're going to want to draw a whole bunch of cards with this deck, because you want to find those creatures and make sure you can cast them and sack them. All right. So you're going to make big things, right? So you're going to play a Rishkar's Expertise is perfect. 4 green, sorcery, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. The hope being you scavenge something pretty significant onto a creature, so you have a big fatty, and so this is going to draw you a whole mess of cards. And then you may cast a card with converted mana cost 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Okay, that sounds good. Cemetery Tampering. This isn't really card draw per se, but it's pretty useful. 2 and a black. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 3 cards. Then if there are 20 or more cards in your graveyard, you may play the exiled card that has been exiled with Hideaway 5 without paying its mana cost. So it's not truly card advantage, but it does exactly what this deck wants to do. I'm filling the graveyard so you can then maybe get it back with a recursion effect or scavenge it onto a creature and then go to work. We have an Underground Recon. So one of the things that happens in this deck is you're going to be doing a lot of milling. You'll put a lot of things in your graveyard. So for 1 green, you have an enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. Return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Yes, please. Okay, Disciple of Freyalise and Disciple of Bolas are essentially the same card twice. So it says, when Disciple of whatever enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you gain X life, and you draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. So again, same sort of idea that you're going to be spending a lot of time building a really big creature on maybe on Varolz or something else with some scavenge, and you're going to be able to use that to maybe sacrifice the creature and then draw a bunch of cards to fuel your deck and keep you going. Disciple of Freyalise is interesting because it's also an MDFC, so it's pretty handy. Both of these are a little bit on the expensive side, so 4 mana for the Disciple of Bolas, 6 mana for the Disciple of Freyalise, but both of them have pretty potent effects when they come into play. Next, we have a Grisly Salvage. Again, doesn't feel like card advantage, but when you go in card selection, so black and a green, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may return a creature or land from them among them put them in your hand, put the rest in your graveyard. Yes, please. Shakedown Heavy. This one's interesting. So 2 and a black for a 6/4. So it sort of fits the requirement of a creature that's big, statted, low cost, so you can scavenge it. It is an Ogre Warrior as Menace. Whenever Shakedown Heavy attacks, defending player may have you draw a card. If they do, untap Shakedown Heavy and remove it from combat. Because this is generally pretty heavily statted early in the game, most people don't want to muck around with this, and you can probably point it at somebody who's maybe got smallish creatures or value creatures, and so they're going to have a choice whether they want to take a lump of 6 or if they want to go and maybe give you a card. And most people are going to give you a card without too much hesitation. So then we have a Phyrexian Arena. So this one's just a classic, 1 black for a enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. You may draw a card and you lose 1 life. Then we have some interesting ones. We have Thran, Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. So 2 black for a legendary creature, human cleric. It's a 2/4 with protection from humans. Pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a +1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature, and draw a card. So that's probably what you're going to be doing most. You're going to use it as a sack outlet to sacrifice creatures. And then black, and then discard a card, and you can proliferate. Handy in a +1/+1 counter deck. We have Asmodeus, the Archfiend. So 4 black for a 6/6 legendary creature, Devil God, with Binding Contract. If you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library, face down instead. And then black, draw 7 cards, or so put them into exile. And then black, return all cards exiled from Asmodeus, the Archfiend, to their owner's hand, and you lose that much life. So this, I think, is a really neat card. And I don't think it's been explored very readily, but I'm going to give it a try here. This, I think, is a very powerful draw engine that reminds me sort of a Griselbrand, but kind of not. So basically, if you would draw cards at the beginning of your turn, instead of drawing your card, you would proceed to exile the top card. Cool. And then at any point, you can pay a single black and return any cards that's been exiled from exile to your hand, and then you play them and whatever. Super good. You lose that much life, which is a bit of a downer, but I think it's a super interesting ability. And then if you have 4 black mana, which I think this deck is able to do pretty readily, you can draw 7 and then put them all in your hand, and you're going to probably be pretty pleased with that. You can do that all at instant speed. I think it's a pretty interesting card. And then we have the Gitrog Ravenous Ride. So 3 black-green for a 6/5 legendary creature, Frog Horror Mount, with Trample and Haste. And when it has Saddle 1, and whenever the Gitrog Ravenous Ride deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice a creature that's saddled at this turn. If you draw X cards and put the X, then up to X lands from the top of your hand onto the battlefield tapped, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So since I want to sacrifice creatures anyway, and most of my creatures are big and chunky, this is going to net me a bunch of cards. All right, let's talk about a few other things. We've got some protection spells. We've got an Inspiring Call. We've got a Smuggler's Surprise. Both of those give my creatures indestructible and hexproof. Well, Inspiring Call doesn't give them hexproof so much, but Smuggler's Surprise does. And Lava Spur Boots gives them haste, and then it also gives them some protection from some ward. All right, and then your interaction and other payoffs. One of the things that Varolz struggles with is it doesn't give your things trample. So Brawn gives them trample. Cool. Hunter's Talent gives your things trample. Cool. Garrick's Uprising gives me trample. Cool. Choose Your Weapon gives you something double strike, so you can use Varolz, scavenge something onto it, and then give it double strike and kill somebody dead, which is nice. Which is always handy. Or we have the Skullspore Nexus. 6 green for a legendary artifact, and this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So legitimately, this is often just cast for green. Whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness equal to its power of those creatures. And then 2 and a tap, double target creature's power until end of turn. This is really to make Varolz into a gigantic Voltron threat and kill them dead. Alright, Colossal Majesty at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Handy. Insidious Roots. Because things are being exiled out of your graveyard, Insidious Roots is going to trigger fairly regularly. And so it makes mana dorks, and then it makes very big plant tokens. And then we have Evolutionary Leap. So let's be real. If you need a way to sacrifice things and put things in your graveyard, this is a great way. And it also then the card replaces itself. You go and find another creature. So you get the card where you want it in your bin, and then you go find another one to put into your hand. All right, interaction-wise, the interaction package in black-green, there's no counter spells, but we have some removal in Overwhelming Remorse. We have Abrupt Decay. We have a Assassin's Trophy. We have an Archdruid's Charm, which can be used as ramp, but is oftentimes a removal spell. We have Atomize, which is a pretty neat spell from the Fallout set, which is destroy target non-land permanent, and then you can proliferate. We've got things like Pick Your Poison to go and make sure that you can go and kill whatever thing you need, whether it's an artifact, an enchantment, or a creature with flying. We have a Nature's Claim, get rid of that troublesome artifact or enchantment. Pest Infestation, same thing. It can also give you a real big wide board. This is Bridgeworks Battle, which is a double strike card, and it gets target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it fights up to one target creature you don't control, or you can use it as an MDFC. Snakeskin Veil is another protection spell, but for a single target. So this is going to protect your Varolz or whatever your biggest target is, and it's going to put an extra counter on it. And then last but not least, we have a sweeper. We have Gaze of Granite, which is kind of a tricky one. So black, green, and X. Destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X or less. So because you're going to be destroying, if you have a big creature or something with a pretty large casting cost, you can this can be used as mostly as a one-sided board wipe. You can tailor it as you need to. If you're playing a token deck, you can then proceed to use it to kill all their tokens for X = 0. Maybe they have a bunch of little 1s and 2s, and you can get rid of all of those. You're going to get a lot of value out of it and this flexibility. All right, that's the deck, folks. It's about a $250 deck, so it's pretty affordable. The whole list is in the show notes down below, so you can go check out and see for yourself. It's available on Moxfield. Again, tons of fun, lots of room to increase power level based on what you're looking to do. It does have a ceiling though, because you are looking to win through creature combat rather than to win through some sort of combo line. But you can do a lot of damage, and your opponents can end up going, yikes, how did I go from being at full health to being dead in a really short period of time? And it's usually because Varolz surprised them as you scavenge stuff and make things unblockable or trample. So, pretty useful stuff. Lots of fun. Check it out if you want. Or if you want to check out all of our other decks, they're available on moxfield.com. Look at the username, the Epic Experiment Podcast, or check out our podcast each and every week on your favorite podcast app. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Have a good one. We'll talk to you again soon.